Hello and welcome. My name is Tanya Olson and I'm a Special Project Manager with FCC out of the Regina Corporate Office. And I'm very happy to have you here with us today. As we get started, I want to acknowledge that I'm delivering this presentation from Treaty 4 territory, the traditional homeland of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Farm Credit Canada has offices covering all treaty areas, unceded and unsurrendered territories, and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. So we thank you all very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today. We believe this session will provide you with important information about becoming CRSB certified through the approved certification bodies, Verified Beef Production Plus, Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Quality Assurance, and you'll also hear details about FCC's Sustainability Incentive Program and how easy it is to apply. So a few reminders before we introduce our first speaker. Today's session will be recorded, so a link will be sent out after the event if you wish to watch it again or share it with a colleague or family member. And there will be time for questions following all of the presentations at the end of the session. So please use the Q&A on the right side of the screen to ask any questions during the session, and we will get to as many as we can and as time allows. It would be really helpful when you're typing your question if you'd indicate which speaker your question is for at the beginning of your question, so we can make sure that we bring that speaker back live and they can answer your question in the moment. If you don't see the Q&A window open, please ensure that your screen is maximized and click on the to speech bubble that should be located in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, and without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our first presenter, Dana Cameron. So Dana is the Communications and Marketing Specialist with the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Dana supports developing and implementing CRSB's communications and marketing strategies. After receiving her business degree from Mount Royal University, Dana returned to her family farm, Westway Farms Limited, where she helps run the pedigree seed, purebred cattle, and feedlot business with her family, husband, and children. So Dana, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Tanya. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here, so thank you for the opportunity, FCC. If we can advance to the next slide, please. Great, perfect. So I work for the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and our mission is to advance, measure, and communicate continuous improvement in the sustainability of the Canadian beef value chain. The CRSB was started in 2014 as a central organization focused on sustainability in the Canadian beef industry. Next slide. I'm not seeing the slide advance, so I'll just keep chatting away. So we are a multi-stakeholder organization and we are membership based. We are really proud of our growing membership, and we're comprised of all parts of the Canadian beef value chain. The strength of our work and impact comes from all of our members working together. Next slide. So what is beef sustainability? It is, and our definition comes from the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. It's based around the 5 guiding principles, all underpinned by the need for economic viability. So natural resources, people and community, animal health and welfare, food, efficiency, and innovation. And it's an environmentally sound, socially responsible, and economically viable product, prioritizing the planet, people, animals, and progress. Next slide. So we have 4 pillars of work that we do at the CRSB. The first is benchmarking and goals, projects and initiatives, communications and engagement, which overarches all of our areas of work, and certification. Next slide. So our first area of work is benchmarking and goals, and this measures the overall performance of the Canadian beef industry. In 2016, we released our first National Beef Sustainability Assessment, and it provided the industry with a benchmark. And these numbers have actually been invaluable in communicating to Canada, how the Canadian beef industry performs from a consumer level all the way to a policy-making level. And if you look, you'll see some of these, and they're very impressive. The beef cattle production helps preserve approximately 1.5 billion tons of carbon in Canada. Cattle beef production in Canada represents only 2.4 of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. And watch, in 2023, we will have a new National Beef Sustainability Assessment coming out. So it'll be great to see how these numbers have changed over time, as sustainability is a journey of continuous improvement. Next slide. The next area we work in is projects and initiatives. There's many people and groups that are doing projects that contribute to improvement in Canadian beef sustainability. We have an online inventory that showcases these projects. And a project I put up here just to share is our Species at Risk partnerships on agricultural landscapes. And we're partnered with our members, Alberta Beef Producers, Canadian Cattle Association, Cows and Fish, and Multisar. And it's to increase, maintain, and improve habitat for species at risk on grasslands in Alberta. And so far, the project has conserved 189,000 acres. And we work together with ranchers to make these projects happen. Next slide. So the real meat of our organization is the CRSB certification framework. So the framework was created in 2018 to recognize sustainable practices in beef production and processing. Participating groups are audited. That includes farms, feedlots, processors, backgrounders, and this enables credible claims on beef sourcing. CRSB certification supports companies wishing to source sustainable products and allows restaurants and retail to use the logo on menu and on pack, and that would be the assurance piece. Next slide. How does it work? You can keep clicking through, Tanya. So it starts at the cow-calf level. So an operation, a farm is certified at the cow-calf level, and an animal has to make its way through the entire supply chain from cow-calf, backgrounding, and feedlot, which are certified to the production standard, all the way to a processor, secondary processor, and then the retail and food service. Primary processors are certified to the processing standard, and then from processing on, everybody is audited to chain of custody requirements. And this enables a CRSB certified logo and claim to be made on products and menus. Next slide. So for producers, how it works is you can review the Sustainable Beef Production Standard on crsbcertified.ca and contact a CRSB certified certification body to get ready for an audit. And luckily, we have 2 of those on the webinar today. We have 3. They're VBP Plus, Ontario Corn Fed, and Where Food Comes From. And there are some great incentives for CRSB certification for producers, and that would include the FCC incentive, which we're very excited to partner with them on, and the Cargill incentive. And CRSB is working with members and stakeholders to explore other incentive opportunities that support producers. Next slide. Where are we now? So currently, there's 1,403 farms and ranchers that are certified to CRSB standards, and that's 19% of the cattle herd. To date, we've sold 29 million pounds with the CRSB claim, and we've sold 10 million pounds this year. And right now, the demand for CRSB certified beef outweighs the current supply, so we really need producers to get certified to meet these demand signals coming from our end users. Next slide. Who is certified? We have 5 processing facilities that are certified to the beef processing standard. That would be both Cargill plants in one in Alberta, one in Ontario, JBS, Atlantic Beef, and Harmony Beef. And we actually have 6 packers and further processors that are certified to the chain of custody requirements, as JBS just got certified here. Next slide. And sourcing, we have, there's 10 companies on screen here that are now sourcing. And that would include Shark Club, Centennial Food Service, Harvey's, McDonald's, Chop, Intercity Packers, Montana, which just was announced 2 weeks ago, Walmart, Gordon Choice, and Co-op, which was announced in September. And Loblaws has also made a sourcing commitment to get CRSB certified beef in stores in Ontario. Next slide. So I wanted to include some consumer perceptions as it gives a good context on where Canadians are at in regards to beef consumption and their view on the Canadian beef industry and sustainability. Next slide. We completed the research this past year in 2022, and I'm sure everyone is happy to know that 90% of Canadians eat beef, and 2/3 believe that Canadian beef is already sustainable. 56% of Canadians say they would be more likely to purchase beef if they see the CRSB certified product on the logo. So this is something that consumers are interested in. And again, with the demand signal, it shows that there's definitely a market for this in the marketplace. Next slide. And that's the end. If you would like more information, you can find us on all of our social channels or visit www.crsb.ca for more information. And now I will pass it off to VBP Plus, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you, Dana. CRSB has been doing some amazing things in the area of sustainability, and you're definitely a leader in the industry. So that was great. Thank you for sharing that update. So just before we move on to our next speaker, I will remind the audience that for those that have joined us maybe a bit late, that we'll be answering questions after our speakers today. So please use that Q&A box to post questions in, and then we'll bring those forward at the end of the presentations today. So without further ado, I will just advance the slide here. Here we go. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter, Emma Cross, with Verified Beef Production Plus. So Emma works in communications for Verified Beef Production Plus and is the Stakeholder Engagement Social Media Coordinator for the Canadian Cattle Association. She is a recent agriculture graduate of the University of Saskatchewan and runs a purebred Hereford operation out of Tofield, Alberta. So Emma, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Tanya, and thanks everyone for joining today. I'm excited to chat with you about VBP Plus's role with the CRSB and with the FCC incentive. Next slide, please. So VBP Plus is under the umbrella of the Beef Cattle Research Council, which really, I think, reflects how we're grounded in scientific practices. And then we're also a division of the Canadian Cattle Association. So we're up to date on things that are going on in beef policy. And really all of our work is really grounded by that. Next slide, please. So VBP Plus is divided into 2 main activity streams, training and certification. So training really refers to our work with producers where we're trying to inform them about best management practices. So as all producers know, the industry is constantly changing. We're dealing with new research, new technology, changing government policy, and all of these other factors that impact what we're doing on farm. So with training, we keep producers informed about the latest best management practices, and specifically because our training program is designed to match our certification requirements, we do talk about the recommended and required practices that you need to get certified with VBP Plus. So today we'll mostly be focusing on certification because this is kind of where we link up with CRSB and with FCC. And in terms of certification, what VBP Plus takes care of is third-party verification of those required practices on farm through an on-farm production audit. So we'll actually have a third-party auditor come out and visit your farm to check out what you're doing and make sure that you're doing all of the practices that we require. And that's how we take care of third-party certification. Next slide, please. I do want to mention, though, some training opportunities that we have through VBP Plus, because really training is the first step towards getting certified with VBP Plus and in turn CRSB. So we just launched this past summer the Canadian Cattle Learning Centre, which houses our new VBP Plus 2.0 online training. And if you're looking to get certified as a producer, this is really the best place to start. The online training goes over all of the required and recommended practices that you need to get certified, but it also talks about a lot of the latest research and is really just a great reference guide for any beef producer that wants to continuously improve their operation over time. We're also looking at expanding the Canadian Cattle Learning Centre into the future, so you'll be able to upload external training that isn't related to VBP Plus onto sort of a central transcript. And so what that will do is show an external third party all of the training that you've undertaken as a beef producer to prove that you're committed to continuous improvement and potentially access funding, grants, those kinds of things as we move into the future. We do also offer training in person and through webinars. Obviously, those two formats aren't quite as on demand as the online training, but if you're looking for a person who's live and can answer your questions right away, that's certainly a format that we do offer as well. Next slide, please. So VBP Plus, in terms of how we relate to CRSB, as Dana mentioned, we are a certification body for the CRSB Certified Sustainable Beef Framework. Now that might sound a bit complicated, but you'll see at the bottom what that boils down to is that VBP Plus standard equals CRSB standard. So if you're VBP Plus certified, you are already automatically CRSB certified. If you're a producer that has gotten audited by VBP Plus, there's nothing else you need to do. You're automatically certified with CRSB, and you can therefore access all of the incentives like FCCs that are associated with the CRSB program. VBP Plus is also a Canadian Food Inspection Agency reviewed on-farm food safety program. Again, sounds kind of complicated, but essentially this means that CFIA has reviewed the VBP Plus standard and is saying that, our producers who are certified are living up to their role in ensuring that beef to the end consumer is a safe product that they can consume. So far, we have 1,718,198 cattle under the management of VBP Plus certified operations as of September 30th of this year. So we are doing really great with buy-in to our program. Next slide, please. So the next thing that I really want to talk about is how our certification cycle works. But the most important part of this to me as a producer myself is that the VBP Plus program is designed and carried out by producers for producers. So anything in the standard and any of the people that you're working with, we understand what you're going through because we are producers ourselves. Even most of our third-party auditors have beef operations themselves. So they're not there to grill you, to ask you hard questions that they know you can't answer. We really want to help you make your operation the most profitable, the most efficient, and the most sustainable that it can be. So anybody you're working with, we hope that you understand that you can trust and really understands what you're going through. So the first year of the certification cycle, it is a 5-year cycle, but the first year is your on-farm audit. So the first step towards this is contacting your provincial coordinator, so your VBP Plus representative for the province, to go through some pre-audit prep. So really this call that you have with the provincial coordinator is designed to make sure that you're as ready as you can be for the audit to make sure that you succeed. The next step will to actually be coordinating an appointment for an auditor to come out and visit the farm. They'll basically take a tour through the farm with you and make sure that you're doing all of the required practices that are required within the VBP Plus standard. And then after they complete the audit, the auditor will complete a report that they send to VBP Plus Delivery Services, Inc. So that's the certification branch, the one who deals with actually issuing the official certification for our producers. I think it's important to note that if there's an issue on your audit, it's not that you fail. You will be issued your certification, but with a corrective action request with a timeline to complete it. So we'll work with you to make sure that that gets fixed up, but you don't have to be worried about failing an audit when the third-party auditor comes out. For the rest of the 5-year cycle, years 2 and 4 are a records assessment. So rather than having someone come out to visit the farm, you're just going to send in either digitally or by mail the records that prove that you're still doing those required practices. And then in year 3 and 5, it's a self-declaration, so you can go ahead and check off that you're still doing all those required practices for us. And those renewals are reviewed by, again, the certification branch of VBP Plus Delivery Services, Inc. And then the third-party auditors will help us review those records as well. Next slide, please. So the next thing that I want to mention here is basically how we tie in with FCC and CRSB in terms of helping our producers get incentives. So in big terms, our role is to validate certification for third-party partners. And basically what that means is that we carry the data on who is certified and who has gone through the work to make sure that they're putting in the right practices and adhere to the standard. And we can share that data with third-party partners like FCC to let them know who can obtain incentives and things like that. It's important to know that the operation has control over third-party data sharing. So the operation has to agree to us sharing this information with third-party partners, and we're not just sharing it, to anyone who asks. There is privacy there. So specific to FCC, VBP Plus sends a producer their certificate after successful certification. So if you're looking for this in your files, I know there are a lot of files that pile up on the farms. So the image on the right here is what you'll be looking for. So when the producer is applying to FCC for the incentive, they will include this certificate with their application. And you'll notice on there that there is a date that says certificate valid until a certain date. So when you apply, you need to make sure that your certificate is valid at the time of application. And that date basically shows when your active status in certification expires. So FCC will look at that to make sure that you are actively certified. In the case that a producer accidentally submits an old certificate or potentially the wrong certificate or any of those kinds of mistakes, we do at VBP Plus work with FCC to make sure that those mistakes get corrected. So don't panic if a mistake is made. We're here to help you, not to tell you you made a paperwork mistake. So that wraps it up to talk about how VBP Plus fits in with CRSB and FCC. I'm happy to answer questions at the end after all the speakers are finished, and I'll pass it back to Tanya.
Great, thank you, Emma. That was excellent. I'd like to welcome our third presenter, Chelsea Martin. So Chelsea is the program manager for Ontario Corn-Fed Beef. Chelsea was born and raised on a farm outside of Woodstock, Ontario, and she's worked with the Ontario Cattle Feeders Association and Ontario Corn-Fed Beef for 4 years as the program manager and auditor for the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Quality Assurance Program. And as of December 2020, she's been auditing for the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Program. So Chelsea's goal is to help Ontario farmers see the importance of social, economic, and environmental responsibilities and how they apply to farmers' lives. Chelsea, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Tanya. Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy harvest season to participate in today's webinar. My name is Chelsea Martin, and I'm one of the auditors for the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Quality Assurance Program, as well as the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Program. Today, I'm going to give a short overview for how Ontario feedlot producers can become certified through both the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program and the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Program. For those on you here on the webinar today who are already certified with the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program, a lot of this information is going to be familiar with you and put you in a great position to become certified with the CRSB program. Next slide, please. To start off, I just want to give a quick overview of the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program. The program was launched in 2001 by the Ontario Cattle Feeders Association, with their objective being to always enhance and maintain a sustainable beef industry. That's why it was so important for the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program and their team to become a certifying body with the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. There's already over 300,000 cattle currently being identified through the OCFB program, and each of those cattle have a $3 per head premium associated with them. The program is recognized globally for its food safety protocols and being a unique producer-owned program, but it originally started out by creating an Ontario brand for Ontario consumers. Next slide, please. So here we have a diagram of a standard layout of an Ontario feedlot. Within the OCFB QA program, there are over 23 areas on farm that are monitored through record keeping, everyday practices such as feeding environment, animal treatment, cleanliness, and of course, implementing and monitoring regulations that pertain to your facility. These areas on farm are monitored and scored also within the CRSB program. Within each of these areas, there are several ways that a producer can validate and verify how they are monitoring and managing everyday tasks on farm. So at the bottom of your screen there's going to be 8 topics. I know they're hard to read, so what I'll do is I'm going to read them out, and then in the next slide I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on how you as producers can validate and verify within those topics how you are progressing and implementing some monitoring tactics on your farm. So number 1, starting receiving and shipping. Number 2, feed and nutrient management. 3, feeding environment. 4, animal health. 5, sanitation and pest control. 6, biosecurity. 7, personnel training. And 8, facility and equipment. And next slide, please. So once again, just following off that last slide, recognizing the importance of overall food safety, quality protocols on farm, and continuous improvement throughout the supply chain is the overall objective for both the CRSB and OCFB program. Everything I talked about in that last slide probably is very familiar to you guys as producers, as those are key areas on farm that have to be monitored for everyday production. So some ways on farm that you as producers can validate and verify that you are monitoring good production practices during an audit would be providing your auditor with record keeping such as ration samples, ration composition records, processing documentation, animal and group treatment, nutrient management plan, environmental farm plan, just to name a few. Over time, all of these good production practices that you guys are implementing every single day become standard operating procedures. The OCFB program provides producers with required standard operating procedures that will not only help you on farm on day-to-day productions, but also help you achieve certification through both the OCFB and CRSB programs. And once again, all of that is done by record keeping, training, implementation, and day-to-day monitoring. I know this probably seems like a lot of information you guys are being dropped on with today, but most of the time, you as producers are doing 99% of the things that all of us as certifying bodies and CRSB is asking for certification through these programs. Next slide, please. So I just want to showcase the producer benefits of joining the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program as well as CRSB. So some of those would be that once you're certified with the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program, you're going to be receiving a $3 per head premium. And then in addition to not only joining the OCFB and CRSB program, and receiving certification, you will be provided opportunities for grants and incentive programs, such as the FCC Sustainable Incentive Program that we are talking about today. Also, by doing these things, you as producers are validating that you guys are being socially responsible, economically viable, and environmentally sound. And then next, please. So just to summarize the last few slides there, I just do want to confirm that the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef Program and CRSB program are 2 separate programs with 2 separate certifications. Both of these programs do have 2 different incentives, not incentives, 2 different premiums associated with them right now, but both of these certifications and programs can be audited through one audit process. Just trying to minimize how much time you guys are really having to spend doing these audits. We do know it's time consuming and we want to do everything to help minimize how much time you're collecting all that documentation on site. So after you have received your certification, a part of that process would be collecting all the records required within both the OCFB and CRSB programs that were talked about earlier for the CRSB side, as well as what I stated on site of some documentations that you guys can collect to validate and verify what you're doing on site. Once again, additional thing that may take place during this audit will be photos taken just to once again validate scoring within these audits. So those photos could be feed bunks, where you guys storing your feed, cattle pens, hospital pens, and overall the records that you are providing us. Once audit has been completed and you have received your certification, for the CRSB and OCFB program, you'll be able to provide that to FCC and move forward with applying for that incentive program that they are offering right now. And then next slide, please, and thank you. So last but not least, thank you guys for your time today. I've provided my information here. If you're looking for more information on how you as an Ontario feedlot producer can become involved in either the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef program or both the Ontario Corn-Fed Beef and CRSB program, please reach out to myself and we can start that process right away. Thank you everyone for your time today, and back to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Chelsea. So our final presenter today, and then we can move on to questions because we're getting a bunch of great questions in the Q&A box there. So thank you. Our final presenter is Curtis Granger. He's the Director of Lending Products and Sustainability Programs at FCC. So let me advance the slide here so you can see his smiling face. There we go. Curtis grew up on a mixed farming operation just southwest of Regina, and he holds a bachelor's degree in business from the University of Regina with a focus in finance and economics. Curtis has worked at FCC for over a decade, where he's held various roles in credit risk, operations, internal audit, corporate strategy, and marketing. So Curtis, I will pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanya. I feel like you were taking a shot at my smile unnecessarily, but that's okay. As Tanya mentioned, my name is Curtis Granger. I'm the Director of Lending Products and Sustainability Programs here at FCC, and super happy to be here. Next slide. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what FCC is up to in the sustainability space, and specifically for you, how that pertains to the beef industry. Next slide. So with FCC, we're not here for just the next quarter. We're here for the next quarter century and beyond. And really what that means to us is we're here to support the long-term health of the industry. And what we think that means is really supporting producers in industry-led initiatives, and also to be a catalyst for the industry where we can to help support additional sustainability programming. Next slide. If you're wondering why FCC, so FCC has a large footprint across Canada and a long-standing relationship with a lot of producers in all parts of the country. So we feel like we're in a unique position to play a supporting role for the industry in this space. Sustainability can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, and this isn't by no means an all-inclusive list. But when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about things like emissions reductions, soil health, biodiversity, water quality, and then also other areas that the industry is interested in pushing forward. Next slide. So a key part when we started this journey with sustainable programming was feeling it was important to recognize producers for what they're already doing. Often when we talk about sustainability, there's innovation and progress that takes place, and a lot of I'll say programs in the world today really focus on getting that next producer to do the thing. With this program, we thought it was very important to recognize the producers who are already doing the thing, as well as encourage additional producers to get certified as well. So it's this program is meant for producers who are already certified, and then those who also become certified at a later date. Next slide. If you're wondering why the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, so when we kind of dove into this area, we felt what the CRSB and the verifying bodies were up to was unique and special. And a couple of things we really liked about it was, one, it was industry-led with real tangible practices in place. And the other piece is that it has some sort of verifying process or auditability to it. So essentially, you could be the most sustainable producer in the world, and if there's no verification behind it, the consumer actually doesn't know if it's happening or not. So that's where that verification comes in, because the consumer does require that type of insurance for a fully transparent process. And this is where we thought what the CRSB and the verifying bodies were up to was unique in the industry. Next slide. So how the program actually works. So two things need to be true. So you need to be an FCC customer with, two things need to be true for you to participate in the program. One, you need to be an FCC customer with term lending. So think, mortgage loans, equipment loans, that kind of thing. And the other is you do need your CRSB certification through one of the verifying bodies. If these two things are true, you are eligible to participate in this annual incentive program. And what you would have heard today from my co-presenters here is there is real work for the producer to get certified. And so on that side of things, we wanted to make sure that the incentive program was super simple because the producer is now, you're already doing all the things you need to do. So we wanted to make sure the incentive payment was a really seamless process. So all the producer needs to do is to go to the website here, FCC Sustainability Programs, and fill out an online application. The online application takes roughly 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if you've buried your certification paperwork in some drawer somewhere. But it really is a simple process. And typically we get the incentive payment out to the producer within 4 to 6 weeks of their application. The maximum amount a producer can receive is $2,000, but again, this is an annual incentive program. So it is there will be ability to reapply in the future for the program, even if you've already received funds in 1 year. So just to kind of paint an example here. So we're currently in calendar 2022. The program is alive and running right now. Essentially, at the end of December, we'll close the program for the 2022 calendar year. The program will kind of get paused for the first few months of 2023, and that's simply to allow us to update processes, our website, our intake portal, all that non-sexy stuff that needs to happen when you run a program. And then essentially in May 2023, we plan on opening the program for the 2023 calendar year, and then producers would be able to then apply for the sustainability incentive payment. So those who are already certified and receive payment in 2022 can again apply in 2023. And then as well as newly certified producers who are also FCC customers would be eligible in that 2023 period again. That window would run from May to December and then rinse and repeat for the life of the program. Next slide. Current incentives to date. So far we've had over 200 successful applications into the incentive program, and FCC has sent out over $300,000 to producers. We've seen solid representation across the country from the producer standpoint, which is really exciting. And the average producer incentive is around $1,440. So again, some producers would max out at that $2,000 annual incentive payment, and then some producers with less lending with FCC would receive less than $2,000. So that's where we get the $1,440 average. Next slide. Last but not least is the goals of the sustainability program. So goal number 1 is to really increase the amount of producers who are certified. When you think of the Canadian beef story and how we're able to both sell our product nationally and internationally, having a trusted certification process that has verification allows Canada to tell our sustainability story in a different way that has real proof behind it. So goal number 1 is to increase the number of producers certified through the CRSB and the verifying bodies. The second goal of our programming is actually outside of beef. So what the beef industry is doing is so special. We want it to happen everywhere else. So we do hope that this program with our partners here can be used as a bit of a starting point to develop other programming for other industries across Canada. And the last goal of the program is really a combination of number 1 and number 2. So for the programming we do have in place, by increasing the certification, obviously we're sending more money out to producers, which is awesome. And then if we're also setting up other industries with similar programming, that it means we're also sending out additional incentives to the industry. So that really third goal is a summary of number 1 and number 2. And yeah, super awesome stuff. So I believe that is the end of my presentation, and I'll toss it back to Tanya here to facilitate some Q&A.
All right, thank you, Curtis. I appreciate that update. So yes, as Curtis mentioned, we'll now turn the floor back to our presenters, where we will share some of the questions that we received during the presentation. So I will put all of their smiling faces up there. See, not just to dig at Curtis. There we go. So that we remember who our speakers were. And we'll move on to a few questions. So I'm going to roll back up here and grab that first question. So I think this question is likely for Dana with CRSB. So can producers that direct market get certified for retail also, and simply have to use a certified slaughterhouse?
That is a great question. So right now, any producer can get certified, but in order to be able to use the logo on pack, the beef has to go through the whole value chain. So the processor would need to be certified and chain of custody certified to use the logo on pack, but your farm is more than allowed to use the logo to communicate on your website saying you are a CRSB certified operation. And after you get certified, our certification bodies do send out a package with logos and language and a logo use guideline essentially for producers and how they can communicate that to their audiences or groups.
Excellent, thank you, Dana. I believe we have another question for you, so stay live for a second there. How is the environmental pillar of your sustainability framework being certified or not?
So we have the natural resource principle, and under that we have 6 indicators that is built into the standards, and it focuses on how producers can achieve outcomes in the areas of wetland management, soil health, carbon emissions and sequestration, air quality, grassland management, and wildlife habitat. So it's actually built into the audit. And we have some additional indicators under the efficiency and innovation pillar, which have an environmental component, and that would include recycling, energy use, and technology. And right now we have our framework consultation open to the public because we are updating our beef production and processing standards. So if you have feedback, I suggest you head to CRSBcertified.ca and review that and put your feedback there so we can improve the framework as we move forward.
Excellent, thank you. So we have another question here, and this one is for Emma with Verified Beef Production Plus. So Emma, who pays for the third-party audit? Producers?
Great question. Yes. So there is an annual certification fee that does go out to producers, and the fee varies based on the production sectors that you're involved in. So if you are strictly a cow-calf operation, for example, your annual certification fee would be $250. If you are a more complicated operation, so say you go all the way from cow-calf and finish your own cattle, then the fee is $400 per year. But the important thing that I want to point out, being with FCC here and talking about the incentive program, is really that incentives are intended to help producers offset some of those costs that are associated with getting certified. And I'll let Curtis sort of support on this in a little bit. But if you take his example of an average incentive payment of $1,440, even if you're paying the max $400 per year, you're still benefiting by a little over $1,000 with that incentive payment. So we do think that there's value there, even with producers paying the certification cost.
Emma covered it so perfectly. I actually have nothing else to add. So the intent of the incentive is for sure to offset on the audit costs and that sort of thing, which is excellent. But most of the incentives paid out actually do exceed what the costs of the audits are. So that's an awesome benefit to the producer.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma and Curtis. We have another question for you here, Emma. Do they need to be audited every 5 years?
Yes, so because, as we know, the industry is constantly changing, and also because the VBP Plus standard is grounded in other documents like the Code of Practice that is created by other organizations, we need to update our standards regularly as well. And as you know, CRSB is too. So because our standards are changing, we do re-audit every 5 years and restart that certification cycle just so that we can make sure that all of our producers are evolving with their changing standards.
Excellent. Before I let you go, Emma, one more question for you here. This is, I think you may have touched on this, but just as a bit of a refresh, which certificate do producers need to submit when applying to FCC?
Yes, this is a frequently asked question that we get from producers. So I did talk a little bit about the online training from the Canadian Cattle Learning Centre. So when you complete the training, you get a certificate that looks something like the certificate that you get after successfully completing an audit. So this is a frequent point of confusion for us. So you want to make sure that you're submitting the certificate that you get after you successfully complete an audit that has the date that you are actively certified until. If you make a mistake, like I mentioned, we're not going to hang you out to dry and say you're denied. We do work with FCC to make sure that we can get any mistakes sorted out, but that's the certificate that you're looking for.
Excellent. Dana, we've got a question that's popped up here for you. What is the biggest opportunity for the CRSB?
Well, right now, demand is really strong in Canada for certified sustainable beef, and this could snowball more demand and more incentive for producers to participate, which will result in more supply and more retailers signing on. And Curtis alluded to the fact that Canadian beef has a great story to tell, and consumers are looking for those assurances, and likely you're already doing all the practices that are required of the audit. So it's just that verification piece that builds trust with the consumer to tell our story and make people feel really great about eating Canadian beef.
Excellent. So this question might be for Emma here. Are there annual fees to be part of VBP Plus?
Great question. So other than the annual certification fee that I just talked about to be actively certified and get your audit and everything, there are no annual fees. So that's the only payment. If you want to take training and you don't intend to get certified at all, there's a $50 enrollment fee for that, but it's just a one-time access fee for 5 years. So no other fees other than that.
Excellent. Great questions here. We've got a question for Curtis at FCC. Is the incentive amount proportional to the amount of outstanding FCC loan?
Yeah, so I can answer that one. It's one I'm kind of careful with, and the reason for that is the last thing I want is someone trying to calculate an incentive on their own and getting it wrong, because there is some nuance to it. But essentially the way it works is, yeah, it's the amount of the incentive payment is proportional based on the amount of lending you have on FCC. So essentially, if you have $400,000 or more of term lending with FCC, you would get the maximum $2,000 payment. And then if you have less than $400,000 of term lending, the payment would kind of decrease from there.
Okay, excellent. Then we've got a question here, I think, for our both maybe Emma and Chelsea, our verifying body groups on the call here. How long does it take to do the on-farm audit?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So if you asked our VBP Plus auditors, their answer would be it depends. But basically the gist is normally that it's somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 hours, I'd say, but it does depend on the amount of preparation that the producer does in advance. So if you have all your records in one binder and you can show them to the auditor really easily, and you have sort of a plan in place for all the places that you need to take them, it's going to be a lot quicker. The other thing that can change how long the audit takes is, again, the production sectors that you're involved in. So if you're just cow-calf, it's not going to take as long as if you're cow-calf and also backgrounding and finishing, because then you need to go through the requirements for all of those different sectors.
I think Emma nailed everything there. Yeah, it really just depends on the size of your operation. On the Ontario side, if you're dealing with crops as well as the feedlot sector, but yeah, 3 to 5 hours, depending on if records have been collected, and the producer is really prepared for that audit, but 3 to 5 hours is a good estimate.
Excellent. Thank you both, Emma and Chelsea. We've got another question here for Emma. Is there an initial startup fee for VBP Plus that is separate from the annual fee?
No, so just the annual fee, and if you did want to take the online training, the $50, those are the only fees we charge, no initial startup fee.
Okay. I think we might have addressed all questions that have come into the box. I'm just getting, the head nods here. One last call for questions. Or do any of our speakers have anything they wanted to add or comment on before we wrap up?
I see one more question. Just
On
the audit cycle for Ontario Corn Fed.
Switching screens here. So the question, what is the audit cycle for the Ontario Corn Fed beef program? Chelsea, I'll turn that over to you.
So the audit cycle is going to be the same as what VBP Plus is. So first year, it's going to be an on-site audit. Second year is going to be a self-declaration. Third year will be a records assessment. Fourth year, self-declaration. Year 5 will be an on-site audit again.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions we've missed? I think we're perfect. Got a couple of different screens here. So if you do have any questions that come up after the session today, or that we were unable to get to, but I think we've caught them all across the different screens, you can check out any of the speakers. You can find them on their social media channels or their websites, or you can email. We can find FCC in the same way, or you can email sustainabilityprograms@fcc.ca as well. But I think that wraps it up for this event. So thank you to everyone for the great questions. Thank you to our speakers for answering them so generously, and for your presentations. You shared really great information with us. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, we will be sending out an email following the event with a link to the recording for you to review again if you wish, or share with a friend or colleague. That link will stay live for 30 days. So you'll be able to access that recording for 30 days after you receive the link. And until next time, take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.